Beautiful Christmas. I gave my wife my Christmas list to give to Santa Claus, as I mentioned last night. And she wasn't impressed. I'm not sure she gave it. She thought I was being babyish. But that was okay, because I was. I know it. But it is going to be a beautiful Christmas. And you know why it's going to be a beautiful Christmas? Because we're all going to be starting on a highway and a new path. And that is what the season of Advent is about. It's about starting a new path. Now, I need about a minute and a half of your attention for some academic work on highways. In particular, I want to talk about the King's Highway, which you've never heard of. But the King's Highway goes, even today, from modern-day Cairo to Damascus, and then cuts off south of the Dead Sea, over into the southern part of Iraq, and then over to Persia. Jericho Road, where the story of the Good Samaritan takes place. That is a bypass highway that gets over to the King's Highway and continues going east over to toward India, Afghanistan, and China. The King's Highway was a major interstate highway in the ancient world. And yes, don't ever think for a moment that the people in the ancient world were less intelligent than us. Not the case at all. The interesting thing, of course, is that the promised land that Moses led the people to out of slavery from Egypt into the promised land sits astride the King's Highway. And in the course of Israel's history, as they began to expand, David, for example, King David's power and prominence grew as he began to expand south along the King's Highway and to control that section of the highway. King Solomon expanded south again, and east and north. And so Israel politically was a very important player throughout much of the history, as recorded not only in the Bible, but also in basic ancient world textbooks. However, here's the thing. Israel had been chosen by God for a very specific reason, to be a light to the other nations in their environment, and to be a light to the nations for them, through God's eyes, was very simply to be in favor of freedom as opposed to slavery. They left slavery crossing the Red Sea, and they entered the Promised Land crossing the Jordan River, the sea or body of water leading to freedom. And that was who they were and who they were to be. People both of freedom and responsibility. And much of the Old Testament with which they lived had to do with the responsibility of how you live with the freedom which you have been given by God. Now, Isaiah the prophet in the first reading today used the idea of highway as a metaphor for our lives. When you think about your life and your body of work, you're always going in a sense of direction. You may not think about your life all that often. You're just going through the motions and going through the day and doing your thing. The years passed, you go this way, it sort of happens. You may get nudged into a different job quite by accident, maybe by design, most often by accident, and you just move along the highway. What happened with Israel is they forgot one something we often forget. Asking the question, what's the purpose? Why are you breathing today? That is sort of a fundamental question. For what reason do you have breath? Well, I'm not going to answer you. I don't know why you're breathing. I have no clue. You have to answer that, and that's part of what a prophet does. A prophet asks the question of the meaning of you. And Isaiah did that in his time, even as he does it now for us in our time. And invites us to think about our lives in terms of shaping a highway, a path on which and by which we can go to a goal or a purpose. Now, the reason for the manner of re-entry into life when you're thinking through the meaning and purpose of it A lot of times you get dissatisfied with it, wish you had done something else, you're not sure what you want to do, and you need almost to do that thing, level the valleys, lower the mountains, so that you have a path that you can go to. In other words, the prophet Isaiah is saying, hey, changing your style of living, changing your values and your focus really takes time, energy, and it's hard work. You need conviction, you need development of character, and you need a community of support, and you need witnesses. Think about all of the times that you have talked with friends or family or workmates who have been totally screwed up. And they know they're screwed up. And they've asked you to chat with them. And you've done that to the best of your ability. What are you doing? Oh, you're not their therapist or their counselor. What you're doing is bearing witness, in the Bible's understanding of things, bearing witness to the screwed upness of their lives. You're saying, yeah, you really are messed up, and you need to change. That's bearing witness. But see, the other thing that you typically don't do is hit and run. You hang out and help people to give thought to how they're going to fill up the valleys, lower the mountains, and carve out a path to a new sense of direction and purpose. And that's what the prophet Isaiah is talking about in the first reading that George read today. You can be skilled and competent at a variety of things, but you can't separate that from your character, your essential asking and answering of the question of the purpose of why you're doing what you're doing at all. You can be excellent at a job, a vocation, a hobby, but you can't ever separate that from the accumulation of knowledge, because you have to know things in order to be excellent at what you're doing. And Israel was faced in Isaiah's time, as we are in our own day, by asking the question, what is our purpose or goal for doing anything? Because see, I think socially what prophets did, they were basically recorders of the signs of the times in their day, and did it very, very astutely and very well, and sometimes harshly. But what are the signs of the times as you see it, as an individual? And how does that call you to repurpose, to rethink, to reorient your life? That is the question asked. One of the big questions, of course, that Isaiah asked, and Jesus did too, and that I will ask of you. Knowing what you know about the world, right now, today, can you still love it? That was the question that Isaiah posed to Israel in their time. Knowing what you know about yourself and the world in which you live, what are you going to do? See, what Israel had chosen to do was to enter into power politics. And they just got screwed. That's the only bottom line. They entered into some alliances. The city of Jerusalem was destroyed. The Temple of Solomon was destroyed. People were deported. It was just a disaster. They had made all the wrong decisions for all the wrong reasons for the stated purpose of being a power. Instead of inviting themselves and others to be a different kind of power, namely a light to the world, a place of justice and fairness and expressing a fullness of humanity in the sense of goodness and love for the world, that they rejected. Well, that's the path part. And that's what makes it so hard, because we really have to rethink and reorient ourselves into new ways in order to love a world which sometimes can get pretty unlovable. And even to love ourselves, because let's face it, I don't know about you, but I'm not always very lovable. And I know that in my more brutal moments of evaluating myself. You know it too. But you see, this is where it's so important to do the hard work of character development, of developing your convictions that you're going to love the world no matter what, and realizing that you need a community of support. The Bible calls us witnesses to each other, where we can both support, confront, and uplift, and help guide or mentor each other. You know St. Francis of Assisi, right? That's where he blessed all the animals, and I did do that too, and all that kind of stuff. See, what you probably don't know, because I've never told you, there's not a day his entire life, and I didn't have one. If I had, I would have brought it today. He carried a skull with him under his arm every day of his life. A human skull. Weird, right? Yeah, you'd think he was a weirdo today, let's face it. If I did it today, you'd think I was weird. And I would have brought it for that reason. But he brought a skull with him every single day of his life, went everywhere. And people would say, that's weird. And St. Francis would say, yes, it is. But what does it cause you to think about? You're weird. Well, it causes me to think about my mortality and my limitations, and also the amount of time I've been given to do something of purpose with my life in the name of God. Now, I'm not commending that necessarily to you, but if I see you carrying a skull with you, I won't think anything about it. I'll think you're being pretty brainy and bright. But a guy like St. Francis thinking along those lines is not a bad way for you to think about your own life. That's what the prophet Isaiah was trying to get the people of Israel in that day to be thinking about. I got an email from a friend of mine a couple weeks ago. He's a pastor out in Montana. And he was out to lunch with a couple people who were just trying to figure out what to do with their lives. You know, they're adults, and you know how things change. The companies change, their jobs change, and you know, the whole shooting match. And at one point, as they were having lunch, the one guy excused himself to go to the bathroom, and he was gone for a little longer than you might normally think. I don't keep count, personally, but maybe some of you do, I don't know. Anyhow, he eventually came back from the bathroom, sat down, and without saying a word, grabbed a napkin and a pen out of his pocket and wrote this down. Work as if you don't need the money. Love as if you have never been hurt. Dance as if no one is watching. You see that path, that highway? Now you know he's got some valleys to fill up and some mountains to knock down. I mean, even going through life dancing. You know, feeling like people are staring at you. He's decided to give it up. What do I care what people think about me if I'm doing right things? You see, that's the trick. Purpose. If I'm doing right things, it doesn't matter what anybody thinks about me. That's the gospel. And that's what Isaiah was trying to invite people to then begin to do that new walk and that new way of walking in a new highway. I wrote down in my journal, I don't know when, it hasn't been too long. I don't know why I wrote it down, but I just offer it to you. I keep a journal about you guys just in case you don't know. I never write names down or anything like that. It's just that occasionally you guys say something like really smart. Or you do, or something in your life is like really stupid and you know it. And I reflect on that, and occasionally I reflect on my own stupid. But I wrote this down. I would rather have our church drink from a flowing stream than a stagnant pool. I was thinking about that a lot lately in terms of water and, you know, some of the shortages that are going around. And also about the, you know, the info glut that we're living with, which I consider, as most of you who know me know I consider to be stagnant pools of, just stagnant pools. Yeah, but the flowing water is the invitation to which we have been invited, not only by Isaiah the prophet, who was the forerunner, but by Jesus himself. You think about your life today. What is the most important thing in our lives today, culturally, that matters? Especially you young people, you'll hear it enough times that you'll just want to throw up. Be productive. Be productive. Do something with your life. Be productive. Okay? Now, when you add productive to progress, and there's no goal for the larger human world in which we live, in God's good creation, there's no goal attached to your productivity and busyness, of what possible value and use is it? And the definitions are always changing with the info glut. Every few years, it's changing all the time, the definition of productivity and purpose. I saw one definition that writes about productivity is value this way. Productivity is to work hard to enrich others who will reward you with as little as possible. I'm telling you now, all of you who are my age, maybe as low as 45 or 50, don't get that. And I can guarantee you, you don't get it. All of you who are under age 40, you understand exactly what I'm talking about. Because work today and vocation is not attached to any purpose or meaning beyond the accumulation of goods and monies. The prophet Isaiah saw that happening and saw disaster in the making. What he did was to call people to a repentance where they gave thought to the channels and the passage and the valleys and the hills and the highway in particular that you're going to walk with your life. And there needs to be a goal and a purpose that goes beyond your particular lifestyle. Now, for Isaiah, for Jesus, it was to glorify and praise the Lord. Now, I just said code language there, so let me keep it simple for you. Whenever you see the word praise in the Bible, it means that you say thank you. Because you didn't ask to be here. You weren't even necessarily invited here. But you are here by the gift of God. And so praise is a word that always means learn to say thanks. And the word glorify God is an action word. You glorify God every time you do some random act of kindness. You glorify God every time you're able to say, my purpose in life is to try to enrich somebody else's life, to try to help somebody out, to try to add meaning to their life, to try to help them think through the purpose of their life to become a more fully human being. That's glorifying God. You see what I'm saying? Code language doesn't cut it, but the practicalities of the matter do. And that's where Isaiah was going with his prophecy. What is the meaning of your life? It is to say thank you, first of all. And secondly, it is to say thank you by living in the world with a purpose, which is not only to enrich the lives of other people, but also to help them to have their highway and path to walk on, so that they can be fully human in the sense that God intended, with goodness, with kindness, with honor, with integrity, seeing and seeking out the beauty in life, and seeking the truth. Those are the gifts that God gives to us. And that's your highway. So start knocking the hills down and fill in the valleys and get moving. Amen.